don't have a lot of time for a video today, but because I love you, I'm gonna give you 3 quick stories featuring a Wendigo and Skinwalkers. So sit back, pretend you don't have life-hindering fear, and let these real-life nightmares spook you something fierce. Remember, if you have a story that you want to have narrated, share it with us at darkstories.org. Ranch Wendigo Encounter from Hans F. I'm a bit of a big guy. I used to work the night shift as a security officer. I live in the Mid-Ohio Valley area in the US, which is rather notorious for bad things to happen in the woods. I've read a lot about Wendigos. My great-grandmother herself was a Cherokee Indian. I had quickly fallen into the legends of things like the Wendigo. This is my recollection of what I believe was an encounter with the Wendigo about half a year ago. I had gone to my uncle's ranch, a large place with a barn, a wheat field, and a nice big house in the middle. I wanted to get away from my mother that day and to stay overnight, helping with the horses tomorrow. It was a normal day. My uncle and my cousin Alex, who was in his early 20s, were out hunting. As it got dark, I used the old radio to make contact with the two. They both carried 10-mile radios on their belts, and they left one at the house to make contact with. They thought it was more fun and rustic than just having cell phones. Yeah, it's weird. For hours I talked with my friends and did housework before it got dark, and by the time night fell, I barely noticed it, as I'd been on the computer with friends the whole time. It was around then that I saw some movement on the right side of the ranch through the window. It was coming from the barn. At first, I thought it was a deer. I had hunted them before and I saw antlers, and immediately clicked to me that it was probably a deer. However, I was horrifically wrong. I kept an eye on the creature, not really knowing if they liked wheat or stuff like that to graze on. Then I noticed it finally move out of the brush as it made its way over to the fence. This time, I thought I saw a slight white tint to the deer, and I was like, no way, must be an albino. I was trying to think logically. No one immediately jumps to, there must be a monster out there. As it was dark and I could not get a very good look, I tried to take my mind off of it. I began talking about albino animals with my friends, telling them that I think there's an albino deer outside and how cool it would be to see close up. Then the creature began to move a bit more into the lights of the ranch, coming closer to the main house. That's when I saw that something was wrong. Its torso seemed far too large and more dog-like than deer. Its body was rotting, hanging off in some places. And that's when a single word came to my mind: Wendigo. No way, I thought. I began to keep a watchful eye on the thing, telling my friends what I was seeing as I did. I then grabbed my radio, ready to get in contact with my uncle.
Hey, Uncle,
I said to him.
I don't mean to be a bother, but we've got a big deer here. White looking. Looks to be either rotting or already dead.
I wasn't sure if my uncle believed in these kinds of things, so I didn't want to just state my mind and call it a Wendigo. The next thing I hear is my uncle calling for Alex. I'd never heard his voice go so suddenly serious like that. Then he said, before going quiet again, that they were on their way back right now. During this whole radio conversation, the creature had moved towards the wheat field and to the other side of the ranch, moving over the adjacent fence and into the brush. I was hoping my uncle would be back before I saw it again, but I was wrong. It came out the same side it had left, just skulking around for a bit. It seemed to be very interested in the barn. As much as I'd like to confirm those red or yellow eyes that Wendigos are said to have, I'm just glad it hadn't noticed me or was staring at me. Eventually, it began to stalk its way over to the barn. I was watching it the whole time. It felt like everything was moving in slow motion as I observed it. Adrenaline was kicking in at the mere sight of it. My heart pounded faster as I watched it move, all jittery and unnatural. It's amazing how the human body can be so afraid at the mere sight of something terrifying, even when it didn't know you were there. I saw it move over to the barn and begin scratching at the door. It seemed to grow agitated that it couldn't get inside. However, after about 30 seconds, it stopped and began to skulk back into the brush on the right side of the ranch where it had originally came in. For a moment, it seemed to stand up to get over the fence. At that moment, I saw it pause, turn its head, and make eye contact with me. Thankfully, then I saw the headlights of my uncle's truck pulling up onto the ranch. I let out a sigh of relief, seeing him get out of his truck with the rifle in his hand. Once inside, he went upstairs to me. I wasn't on the computer anymore. He then led me and Alex to his bedroom, where he had a cabinet for his rifles. He handed one to me, then took the one Alex had been hunting with, and gave him one that seemed newer and a little bit bigger. My uncle had Alex and I posted around the house, checking the windows, telling us to keep an eye on the tree lines to the left and to the right. This had me terrified. He was taking what I said so seriously, as if he knew something that I didn't. After some time of it being quiet and there being no movement outside, I went to check on my uncle. I had some questions to ask. However, I heard something that shook me to my core. As I went downstairs, my uncle stopped me and said, "Weren't you just outside?" I replied no. I'd been upstairs where he told me to be the whole time. He then informed me that he had just heard me outside, asking me to unlock the back door and come out here. He said in all seriousness, he had heard me out there, saying that I had found something. My whole body began to tremble. It was like I had been placed into an arctic of fear. The kind of feeling you have when you know you're not safe anymore. After telling Alex about that, we were on full alert for the rest of the night until sunlight came bleeding into the house. We never saw or heard anything else. But the story does not stop there. 2 weeks after this event, I got a call from my uncle and Alex, who had been in an accident on a road in the boundaries of their ranch while hunting. It was tragic news that I was not ready for, because my uncle and Alex had not survived. The police blamed a black bear, but I'm not so sure about that, especially considering what we had seen and heard just 2 weeks ago. Alex had been a brother to me my whole life. This whole thing seemed off. This was no hunting accident. This was no random black bear attack. No, there's something more to it. Strange creature in Damascus. From Nonstopal. This happened in Damascus, Oregon. I lived in a manufactured home out in the woods with only one neighbor. It gets pretty dark out there at night, sometimes so dark that you can't see a thing. There are no streetlights nearby, so the only way you can see anything is if you have a flashlight or the moon is full. I was walking down our long gravel driveway one night with my girlfriend. I believe it was 11 p.m. We were going to get the garbage and recycling from the end of the driveway. We did this because we were lazy at the time and often only remembered to get our mail at night, which would then remind us to get the trash cans. As we were walking, I got a sensation as if someone was watching us. I had a flashlight with me, as I always brought one when we were walking at night. You'd be crazy not to. As the sensation only grew stronger, my mind began to wander, concocting images of what may be out there in the woods. I kept my flashlight pointed ahead of us. I remember noticing just how quiet it was that night, so quiet that each footstep in the gravel seemed to echo for miles. Oddly enough, my girlfriend wasn't as alarmed as I was. Maybe I was just being paranoid, I told myself. We were able to grab and drag the bins back up to the house, and that's where things get weird. Once we dropped off the empty garbage and recycling bins at the house, I began to hear movement in the bushes by the tree line. Due to the loud dragging sound of the bins, this movement may have been going on the entire time. My girlfriend heard it at the same time as me. We both went quiet. I do not know what possessed me to walk from the house over to the sound, but I did. I couldn't see anything within the dense bush in front of me, but I could hear the movement. I was almost right on top of it. I should have been seeing something. I began to feel stupid, considering that mountain lions are really common out here, and if one had been following us, approaching it was the worst idea possible. I swallowed hard, turned slowly, and began to head back to my girlfriend, who had a look on her face like I was crazy. But a couple of steps later, I heard the most horrifying thing. An ominous-sounding whistle coming from directly where the bushes were behind me. I broke into a run, and so did my girlfriend, heading back inside the house at record speed. And as we did, something came out of the bushes, whistling at us the entire way, until we heard it smack into the door, still whistling. We do not know what it was, but I'm incredibly thankful that I never turned to see it. But to this day, I have no idea what sort of animal whistles like that while it hunts. The Skinwalker from Richloam Woods, from Blake C. This happened years ago, so some of the details are kind of spotty. I was 8 years old, living right across the road from a management area called Richloam, which really was used for dog hunting. I liked hearing the dogs bark on occasion when I would walk down the paths. I'd listen for hours at the excited beagles and hounds that went for their prey. From time to time, there would be lost dogs that were injured, and I would return them home to their owners. I knew all the paths and trails in those woods, or at least that's what I thought. One day I was walking down the main road that the trucks took to drive in and out of, when eventually I hit an intersection where the road went 4 ways, forward, left, right, and back. It was there that I noticed for the first time a trail that I was not familiar with. It even looked fresh, as if it had just been made. I looked down the trail, and I could hear barking and howling down the way, like a pack of dogs that had treed something. I took off down the trail toward the noise, but as I got closer, the sounds of the dogs began to sound strange, wrong, and distorted. It was like their voices were being played back on a broken record player. They sort of tailed off into a hoarse grunt at the end. While the new path was in itself strange, my greatest concern and fear was what was making those terrifying howls. I was young and stupid and curious, worried that it could be a hurt animal. I didn't even see or think of the dangers that were ahead. I then heard a slight crunch to my left, causing me to jump back and land on a large stick, causing a loud cracking sound giving away my position. Whatever was out there with me, it did not like this, suddenly releasing a loud, ear-piercing screech that echoed through the pine forest. To this very day, nothing has scared me as bad as that sound did. I decided to book it out of those woods. Going into this trail was a bad idea, and I wish I'd never gone. I soon came to an abrupt stop when something huge at the height of at least 7 feet stepped foot onto the path. I didn't wait to see it in detail. I took off to the left, trying to zigzag back and forth until I came across one of the roads. I booked it back down the road towards my home. When I made it to my yard, I basically vaulted over the chain link fence and I made my way into the house. When I walked in, my parents asked me what in the world was wrong. I said I decided that I just wanted to run home for the exercise. I knew that if I told them something dangerous came upon my path, they would never let me walk out there anymore. And if I told them what I saw, they would know that it didn't make sense and would probably not believe me. All I could do was not tell them the truth. Later that night, when I was sitting in bed, I couldn't stop picturing in my mind the details that I did get of that thing that came out on the path. It was huge. It was covered in fur. I remember there being bits of itself hanging off, as if the flesh was rotting. And all I could remember after that were its eyes, a reflective yellow that reminded me of death itself. Well, that brings us to the end of this short episode, but I'll be back tomorrow with a bigger episode. But what do you guys want to hear? Let me know in the comments so I can fill your day and night with nightmares for the work week to come. Thanks so much for listening. Please be sure to like and share this video. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you never miss another scary story. Good night. Stay safe out there and stay creepy, because this world is a strange one.